I had barely stepped out of the moving truck when I first saw her Sharon, the self-declared queen of the cul-de-sac, complete with her signature visor, a thick clipboard pressed to her chest like it contained state secrets, and the type of frozen smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was early afternoon. The sun was sharp, catching glints off her oversized sunglasses. I'd just finished unloading a few boxes onto the porch of my newly purchased home, my so-called retirement dream, tucked at the edge of a tidy suburban lakefront community. After 20 years of serving in intelligence, I thought I knew what surveillance looked like. But I wasn't prepared for HOA surveillance or Sharon. She stood at the edge of my driveway, like it was a military checkpoint. I walked toward her, offering a neighborly nod. "Afternoon," I said. Her smile didn't budge. "You're the new resident of 14 Maple Circle." I glanced at my mailbox, then back at her. "I suppose that's me." Without introducing herself, she held out a packet of papers like it was a court summons. "This is your preliminary violation notice. You're currently non-compliant in several areas." I blinked. "I've been here 43 minutes. Actually," she said, flipping her clipboard with flair, "our observation team recorded your truck idling past the mandated noise curfew zone during ingress." Observation team. Her lips twitched. "We take neighborhood standards very seriously. There's also the matter of your garage door being left open, your landscaping being below community aesthetic code, and an unregistered trailer seen in your driveway." I glanced at my garage open because I was moving in. My unregistered trailer was a military-grade tactical utility hauler, still carrying some of my old field gear. Landscaping, I hadn't even unpacked the hose. "I haven't even had the water turned on," I said. "Do I at least get a welcome basket before the fines?" Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "We believe a strong start ensures a strong community." "And who's we?" She tapped her badge. "I'm the HOA president." No last name, no offer of a handshake, just that unblinking confidence people wear when they think they're the final word in every conversation. She turned to leave, but paused halfway down my driveway. "Oh, and Harris," I said. "Mr. Harris," she repeated. "We hope you'll acclimate quickly to the expectations of Willow Lake community. We value order above all else." With that, she walked away. I stood still, packet in hand, wondering how I'd gone from counterintelligence to suburban compliance court in under an hour. That night, I sat on my back porch with a cup of black coffee, and the violation packet splayed open in front of me. There were charts, graphs, even a map of my property with hand-drawn lines and numbers I'd never seen before. One section, highlighted in pink, claimed that my southern lot boundary was subject to pending jurisdictional review due to a recent HOA easement annexation. That was not legal. I pulled out my property deed and checked it again. I'd bought this home directly from the previous owner, a retired firefighter who'd had zero HOA encumbrances. The plat map from the county office showed clear boundaries mine. Sharon's map was different. It was doctored. I knew a manipulated document when I saw one. Different font overlays, cropped signatures, inconsistent notary stamps. I could practically hear the alarm bells ringing in my head. Something was off, and I knew better than to ignore that feeling. The next morning, it got worse. I woke to find a yellow envelope taped to my front door. Another violation, this one citing me for inappropriate window coverings. I hadn't even hung curtains yet. Then came the email sent to my personal inbox, though I had never given it out, warning me that continued disregard for community standards would result in escalated enforcement. I checked my surveillance system installed just 2 days prior and rewound the feed. At 2:16 a.m., someone had walked onto my property and peeked through my windows with a flashlight. The figure was too far for facial recognition, but they wore a black tactical vest. Not the local police, not a contractor. This was someone trying to play dress-up. I copied the footage to a flash drive and slipped it into the back of my safe. Later that afternoon, I heard tires crunching gravel. I stepped onto the porch just in time to see a black SUV with unmarked plates roll slowly past my house, then circle back. It parked directly across the street. 3 men got out, 2 wearing dark cargo pants and tight black polos, one with a chest rig and a radio. They stood at the edge of my property, scanning like they were doing recon. One of them held a notepad. Another had something clipped to his belt, what looked like a badge, but nothing I recognized. They approached, one hand raised, Sir, we're here on behalf of the Willow Lake Residential Enforcement Division, the first man said. Which is what exactly, I asked, keeping my voice neutral. We're the authorized security response team for the HOA. We received a complaint regarding non-compliance and are here to conduct a site check. You're trespassing, I replied evenly. This is private property. And last I checked, HOAs don't have law enforcement powers in this county. One of the men flipped open a fake-looking badge. We're certified under the Residential Tactical Community Patrol Program. I raised an eyebrow. That wasn't real. Not here, not anywhere. It sounded like something made up in a basement PowerPoint. I'll need your names and agency affiliations, I said. Sir, refusal to cooperate may result in escalation. I gave a slight smile. Escalation is my middle name. I stepped back into the house without another word, closed the door, and walked straight to the hallway closet. From a locked case, I pulled my old badge federal. The kind with weight, not expired, not revoked, just dormant. And next to it, the number of a friend who owed me one. Sharon wanted a war. She just declared it on the wrong guy. By noon the next day, I had 2 city officers from the local precinct confirm that no agency in the state had anything called a Residential Tactical Community Patrol Program. There was no record of any private security firm licensed under that name. And yet, those 3 men had walked up my driveway like they had legal authority. And Sharon, she was nowhere to be seen that morning, like a queen who sends pawns to fight her battles. Around 3:00 p.m. As I was inspecting the side yard for damage, just in case someone had tried creeping through again, I heard it. A low rumble, not like the quiet hum of a delivery truck or the clunky exhaust of a landscaping van. This was a deep, aggressive growl. Engine tuned, tires thick, the kind of vehicle you'd expect in a tactical convoy. When I turned toward the sound, I saw it coming down the hill. A matte black SUV, same model as yesterday, except this one had lights tucked behind the grille, a bull bar in front, slightly more aggressive stance. It pulled directly into my driveway. This time, 4 men stepped out, all wearing black. Tactical boots, earpieces. 2 of them had hard cases. One wore mirrored sunglasses, holding a folded clipboard in one hand and a tablet in the other. The lead guy approached, stopping at the property line. Mr. Harris, he asked. His voice clipped, direct. Depends who's asking. He reached slowly into his breast pocket and pulled out a laminated ID. No badge, just a seal that didn't belong to any official department I'd ever worked with. HOA Enforcement Task Force, he said. We're here to conduct a secondary compliance inspection under Section 42B of the Willow Lake Protective Code. There is no Section 42B, I said flatly. It was recently passed under emergency resolution, he replied. As per HOA jurisdictional override doesn't exist in the state of Oregon. I cut in. I stepped closer, letting my stance square. I want you off my property, now. The other men shifted. One began casually circling to the side, as if trying to gain a better view of my garage. Another opened the tailgate of their SUV and started pulling out some kind of device tripod legs and a mounted scanner of some sort. Last warning, I said, my voice now unmistakably official. The lead guy didn't blink. Sir, refusal to comply will result in penalties and property liens. I let the silence hang in the air, like a drawn bow. Then I turned around, walked into the house, and closed the door. I went to the back hallway closet and retrieved 2 things. One, my old badge from the bureau, the laminated federal ID I had earned through years of field work. And 2, a burner phone I hadn't touched in 6 years. I powered it on. One number was already programmed. I called it. It rang twice. Then, a voice. Harris, long time. I've got a neighborhood problem, I said. The HOA kind. Do you need eyes or action? Both. And bring the truck. He chuckled. Copy that. I'll be there before sunrise. When I came back outside, 10 minutes later, the black SUV was still there. The 4 men were now walking around my backyard, taking pictures of my tool shed, measuring from my porch to the fence, like they were building a case. I didn't say a word. I lifted my phone, angled it, and took a photo. Then another. One of the men turned. Sir, photography is not permitted during a compliance operation. That's funny, I said, because this isn't a compliance operation. This is trespassing. I took one more picture and uploaded it to my secure cloud folder. If you're not gone in 60 seconds, I said, I'm calling the real police. Not your cosplay division. One man muttered something under his breath, but the leader raised the hand, signaling retreat. They packed up and left without another word, but not without lingering glares. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my study, screens surrounding me, security footage rolling, motion sensors active, phone charged and ready. At 3:42 a.m., motion alert triggered, rear gate. I watched in real time as someone in a dark hoodie crept along the fence line. He scanned the area with a flashlight, then ducked out of view. I didn't go outside, not yet. I called the local precinct again and requested a patrol. They logged the complaint, promised to send someone by. But I knew it wouldn't be enough, because this wasn't just a territorial neighbor dispute. This was organized, systematic, coordinated. And Sharon, she hadn't shown her face since the first day. But somehow, everything had her signature all over it: control, intimidation, and an obsession with authority. Well, she'd soon find out that she wasn't the only one with friends in high places. By the time the sun came up, I was already on my second cup of black coffee, sitting by the window, waiting. There was a weight in the air, like the quiet before a summer storm. I'd dealt with high-pressure standoffs before in war zones, at federal field ops, even during tense hostage negotiations. But this was personal. My own land, my own home, my name on the deed, and a group of glorified clipboard warriors trying to intimidate me off it. At 7:13 a.m., a knock rattled my front door. Not a knock, actually. A pounding, rhythmic, authoritative, meant to intimidate. I didn't flinch. I opened the door slowly, iPhone already in my hand, recording. "Morning," I said, voice even. Standing on my porch were two of the same men from yesterday's group, this time dressed a bit more polished, matching windbreakers with WLRP logos stitched in silver thread. That acronym again, Willow Lake Residential Patrol. Fake as Monopoly money. Behind them stood Sharon. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit, perfectly ironed, and held her usual clipboard like a sword and shield combined. There was something smug in her smile, like she already thought she'd won. "Mr. Harris," she began, "we're here to serve formal notice of non-compliance." I kept the camera steady. "Non-compliance with what your made-up HOA bylaws or your LARPing task force." Sharon's smile didn't break. She tapped her clipboard. "You've erected a non-permitted perimeter structure." "You mean my privacy fence," I said. "The one that's been there since 1994. Section 13C prohibits alterations to the visual profile of the community." I glanced past her to the road. "Sharon, I live on 5 acres. You can't even see my house from the subdivision road. That doesn't exempt you from architectural harmony expectations." I took a step forward. One of the fake officers moved as if to block me, hand hovering near a holstered radio. I raised an eyebrow. "You planning to detain me for stepping onto my own porch?" He didn't respond. So I stepped fully into the sunlight. Sharon shifted uneasily, but pushed on. "This is your second warning. Should you refuse to attend the emergency HOA disciplinary hearing, we'll proceed with mandatory corrective action." "What does that even mean?" I asked. "You gonna repaint my house while I'm asleep?" Sharon's voice dipped colder. "It means the HOA reserves the right to contract a third-party enforcement vendor to remove unauthorized structures and assess costs directly to your account." I smiled, a slow, amused, patient smile. Then I turned my phone to show them the camera was live streaming. "Hi, Internet," I said. "Say hello to the Willow Lake HOA militia." Sharon's composure cracked for half a second. One of the faux officers stepped back. "You're being disruptive," she hissed. "No," I said. "I'm documenting an attempted extortion on private property." I paused. "Sharon, let me ask you something. Did your fake police even register their vehicles? Because I ran your plate yesterday. Came back as unregistered." She blinked, hesitated. "And this little patrol group of yours, you got insurance for them, workers' comp licensing. Because see, now we're not just talking HOA infractions. We're talking civil liability. We're talking criminal impersonation." Sharon's nostrils flared. "You've made yourself a problem, Mr. Harris. And you've made yourself a case file," I shot back. I stepped down the porch steps, inches from the nearest man's tactical boots. "Now get off my land." They left without another word. But I wasn't done. I spent the rest of that day compiling footage, timestamps, and backing everything up to multiple encrypted drives. I submitted a formal complaint with the county sheriff. I forwarded a report to the state attorney general's office. I contacted my old friend from the Oregon Bureau of Investigation and got a case number opened. But the real play that was still on the way, that night, just past 10 p.m., I heard the gravel shift outside. Headlights, but not the HOA kind. This was the Ford Raptor I'd asked for. Nathan stepped out, taller than I remembered, wearing a ball cap low and a grin just barely tugging at one side. "Nice fence," he said. "Nice truck," I replied. He opened the tailgate and pulled out two black cases. Inside surveillance gear, audio tools, infrared trip sensors. We didn't talk much, just set things up quiet, efficient, and surgical. Before midnight, the entire property perimeter was covered with invisible eyes. If Sharon wanted a war of escalation, I was about to take her bluff and raise her one federal investigation. The next morning broke unusually quiet. Even the birds seemed to hold their song, as if nature itself was waiting for the showdown that had been building since Sharon's first smug knock. My cameras hadn't caught movement overnight, but I knew better. HOA Sharon was the type to play chess, not checkers, and I had a feeling she thought she was about to make her checkmate move. At precisely 900 a.m., the doorbell rang. Not a pounding this time, just a single chime, almost polite. I checked the live camera feed on my tablet. 3 men in suits, black, serious, clean cut, a white Crown Vic idling at the curb. Sharon was standing just behind them, arms folded, wearing that same cream pantsuit like it was body armor. I opened the door. "Mr. Harris," one of the men asked. I nodded. "That's me." He flipped open a badge wallet so fast it was almost a blur. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. We'd like a word with you." I tilted my head, stepping onto the porch. "Really, FBI? That's interesting." "We received a complaint regarding potential threats made to community leaders," the agent continued. "Would you be willing to come with us and answer a few questions?" Sharon's smirk widened, like she'd just watched her favorite soap opera villain get arrested. I narrowed my eyes and looked at the badge again. "Mind if I take a photo of that?" The agent stiffened slightly. "Sir, we'd prefer not." I cut him off. "No problem, because I know exactly what a real federal badge looks like." I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my own. FBI. Retired. Field Commander. Still valid under Section 5 clearance for identification purposes. Sharon's smile twitched. The lead agent blinked and stepped back. Now let's talk," I said, voice suddenly steel. "Because impersonating a federal officer, that's a felony." I tapped my phone, sent a pre-coded alert, and within 30 seconds, the gravel of my driveway crunched under heavy tires. "Nathan." Except now he wasn't in casual mode. He stepped out of his Raptor in a full FBI tactical vest. Behind him, 2 black SUVs with actual license plates rolled up, and 6 agents from the Regional Bureau unit stepped out. The fake agents froze. Sharon's face drained of color. The real lead agent walked up, showing his badge. "Morning, Chief, we got your alert. These the impersonators." "Sure are," I said. Came to my door with a fake warrant and tried to detain me in front of my own house. "Ma'am," the agent turned to Sharon. "You're going to need to step back." Sharon stammered. But I filed the complaint. They're here for him." "No, ma'am," the agent replied calmly. "They're here for impersonation, attempted unlawful detainment, and potentially conspiring to harass a protected federal retiree. And you may be included in that." She tried to bolt. Nathan stepped in front of her, arms crossed. I wouldn't. The fake agents were cuffed within 2 minutes. Sharon was escorted to the side and informed that her private enforcement contracts would be reviewed for legality. She tried to play innocent, then tried to cry, then tried to threaten a lawsuit. None of it stuck. Later that afternoon, I stood in front of the camera and recorded a message. Not for the feds, not even for Sharon. For the neighbors. I uploaded it to the Willow Lake Community Board. "Hi, folks. You probably heard a lot of sirens this morning. I want to assure you, things are under control. What happened today wasn't just about one man on his land, it was about all of us. About how far we let fear and fake power go. But the good news, it stops here. With truth, with real law, with neighbors who watch out for each other." The post went viral, not just in Willow Lake. People across the state, even the country, started commenting, sharing, liking. HOA horror stories came pouring in, but so did hope, so did encouragement. Apparently, I'd become the face of HOA resistance. Not what I'd expected for retirement, but maybe, just maybe, exactly what I was meant to do. Overnight, the tone in the neighborhood shifted, like someone had lifted a weighted blanket off our backs. For the first time in months, the streets of Willow Lake didn't feel like a surveillance zone. No faux patrols circling the cul-de-sacs, no clipboards, tracking garden gnomes and mailbox paint colors. Just regular people walking dogs, watering lawns, kids on scooters like a community should be. But Sharon, she wasn't done. The morning after the arrests, she showed up at the HOA clubhouse with a Bluetooth headset and an armful of manila folders, strutting like she was still queen of the empire. And to her credit, some of the board still followed her, at least for the first hour. That changed quickly. Word spread fast that federal charges were being filed against her security contractors. And worse, the HOA's legal coverage might not protect them if fraud or criminal negligence was proven. That's when the cracks in the dam became fissures. I stayed back, choosing not to attend the emergency meeting she hastily called. I didn't need to. I had installed a small mic legal visible and registered near the community bulletin board earlier that week, after Sharon posted a notice attempting to bar me from HOA meetings. The irony, her own paranoia, had made her post signs that technically turned the common area into a public space for community transparency, which meant anything spoken there was fair game. I'm telling you, we have the right to regulate access, Sharon's voice rang sharply through the recording. We didn't vote on those regulations, another voice. A man's answered, and we didn't approve private enforcement teams. You all agreed, Sharon hissed. No. You pushed it through in a closed email thread. Sharon, that's not how bylaws are amended. Everyone here has benefited from the order I created. Order. My husband was fined $500 for letting our daughter draw chalk art on the sidewalk. Another voice chimed in. You told me my wreath was culturally aggressive. What does that even mean? Sharon snapped. You're all weak. Without me, this community would fall into chaos. The meeting dissolved into shouts. By the end of it, several board members had walked out. One of them, Evelyn Chen, an attorney whose front yard had been flagged as improperly tiered, publicly resigned and offered to assist any residents with legal filings against the HOA. Things snowballed from there. The community group chat lit up. Photos from Sharon's past HOA notices resurfaced. People who'd been silent, some too afraid to speak out before, began sharing stories, unjust citations, canceled permits, blocked property sales, even HOA funds allegedly used to pay for Sharon's spa treatments. I didn't post anything. Didn't need to. This was no longer my fight alone. That week, I received a certified letter from a city inspector. Apparently, Sharon had attempted to file an injunction claiming I was threatening communal safety with my presence. The letter, however, came with a cover note from the city's legal office. Dear Mr. Harris, we've dismissed the filing based on lack of jurisdiction and potential fraudulent statements. However, we are initiating a review of the HOA's permit history and vendor compliance for the last 3 fiscal years. Thank you for your cooperation and prior documentation. Attached were 10 pages of records they'd compiled, including several documents I hadn't yet turned over. Someone on the board had flipped. 3 days later, I stood at the edge of the lake behind my property. The same lake Sharon had once tried to claim exclusive HOA rights over. The same one she'd attempted to fence off with plastic signs and self-importance. I took out my phone, opened the drone app, and guided the small quadcopter over the property line. It hovered over the clubhouse. A crowd was gathered outside, neighbors with folding chairs, coolers, and homemade signs. One read, "We're not a kingdom, Sharon." Another, "No more Hoaboos." A third, "Chief Harris for mayor." I laughed aloud. And then I watched through the drone's camera as Sharon stormed out of the clubhouse, flanked by 2 members of the board, both holding resignation letters. Someone shouted, "How does it feel to be evicted, Sharon?" She turned and screamed, "You'll all regret this. You think he is your savior. He's nothing but a thug with a badge." My phone buzzed. It was a message from Nathan. "She just filed a FOIA request on you. She's grasping." I replied, "Let her. The more she digs, the more she buries herself." Because now, the world was watching, and the HOA, once a fortress of petty tyranny, was crumbling from the inside out. When the audit team from the State Housing and Community Compliance Office arrived, they didn't bother with discreet entrances or hushed voices. They rolled up in 2 white vans, set up folding tables right in front of the HOA clubhouse, and hung laminated signs that read "State Authorized Audit in Progress." It was, in every sense, a spectacle, and the residents of Willow Lake were ready for a show. Neighbors brought lawn chairs. Someone set up a lemonade stand. A teenager with a portable speaker started playing the soundtrack to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on repeat. It was part justice, part comedy, and entirely overdue. For days, the audit team combed through records budgets, citations, communications, contracts, and each page they pulled seemed to come with a new revelation. Sharon had been issuing fines through personal Venmo accounts. She'd paid unlicensed contractors in cash for beautification projects that never occurred. A community playground fund had been rerouted into a line item called Executive Travel and Coordination, which turned out to be a spa retreat in Arizona. But the most damning piece, a forged signature on the supposed annexation agreement, the very document Sharon claimed gave her authority over my ranch's access road. The auditor held it up at a town hall meeting and asked, "Does anyone here recognize this handwriting?" Dead silence. Until Mr. Alvarez, the oldest resident in Willow Lake and former civil engineer, stood up. "Yeah," he said, "that's Sharon's. I watched her write that exact flourish on a birthday card once." The crowd erupted. Sharon, for her part, didn't go quietly. She accused the audit team of being deep state operatives. She held an impromptu press conference from the hood of her Lexus. She tried to call in a property emergency ordinance and demanded the sheriff remove the audit team. But the sheriff, well, he happened to be married to Evelyn Chen, the former HOA board member who was now publicly representing 5 residents in a class action suit against Sharon. He refused to act on her request. Instead, he offered her a courtesy ride home to cool off. Sharon refused, then collapsed into a public tantrum that went viral within hours. Someone edited footage of her screaming over "O Fortuna," and within a day, the video had over 2 million views. With the audit completed, the report was forwarded to the district attorney, the state ethics board, and the IRS. Federal charges were now on the table, but even as that machinery moved slowly, something else had already begun to shift, something more meaningful than headlines or court filings. The neighborhood was healing. I remember the first sign of that healing: a boy, maybe 10, drawing a chalk rainbow on the sidewalk in front of my property. His mom watched nervously until I waved from the porch and offered a bottle of water. "We weren't sure if we'd get fined again," she said quietly. "Last time, we got a $75 citation for graffiti." "Not anymore," I told her. "Draw as much as he wants. The street could use some color." Soon after, the Patels repainted their door bright turquoise. The Carter family planted native wildflowers along their fence. An older couple down the block hosted the first community potluck in over 2 years. And no one asked for HOA approval. I did get one unexpected visitor, though. Sharon's son. He couldn't have been more than nervous, hands in his jacket pockets. He stood at the edge of my driveway, like he wasn't sure he should be there. "Mr. Harris," he asked. I stepped outside. "Yes." I wanted to say sorry," he said, "for what my mom did. And thanks for standing up, for not letting her, keep hurting people." I saw something in his eyes, something Sharon had never shown. Humility. "I appreciate that," I said, shaking his hand. He handed me a small manila envelope. "She's moving. Leaving the state. Thought you should know." Inside was a note. Short. Handwritten. The pen had pressed hard into the paper. "You win. You always had the power. I just wanted to matter, Sharon." I folded it gently, walked inside, and tucked it into the back of my desk drawer. Not as a trophy, as a reminder that even tyrants are human, and sometimes they just get lost. The very next morning, I strolled out to the entrance of my ranch, coffee in hand, and stared at the old toll booth I had built during the height of the HOA madness. It still stood modest, handcrafted from cedar and tin, with a simple white sign that had faded from the sun but still read, "Private road, $20 per car, HOA fines don't apply." At the time, it had been my only line of defense, my protest against unjust power. Now, it had become something else, a symbol of quiet rebellion, of dignity, drawn like a line in the dirt. And to my surprise, it had also become a bit of a local landmark. That weekend, a young couple pulled up in a red Subaru. They didn't live in the neighborhood. In fact, they were from out of state. "You mind if we take a picture?" the man asked sheepishly. I chuckled. "Go right ahead." They posed in front of the booth, like it was the Hollywood sign. Then they handed me a $20 bill. "You don't need to pay," I said. "The fight's over." The woman smiled. "That's not for access. That's a thank you." Within days, others followed. People began leaving notes in the old collection box, not just cash, but folded letters. Thank you for standing up to bullies. This booth reminded me of my grandfather. You gave us our neighborhood back. At first, I didn't know what to do with the money. I didn't build the booth to profit off my neighbors only to make a point. But now, the point had turned into purpose. So, I created the Back Gate Fund. The money went toward community needs that had been long ignored under the HOA regime, like repairing the rusted-out benches near the lake, installing proper lighting on the trail that wound behind the neighborhood, and building a proper playground where the HOA had once just posted "no loitering" signs. And I made every expenditure public, every receipt, every vote taken by the community. No more secret bylaws, no more fines in the night, just people rebuilding trust, one shared dollar at a time. The booth also became something else, a gathering spot. Folks would pull over to chat. Sometimes they brought snacks, coffee, even small handmade decorations to hang from the booth's awning. It became like a confessional, a town square, a front porch all rolled into one. Kids would run up and ask Mr. Harris, "Can we help paint the sign again?" Neighbors would gather on Sunday mornings, just to sit on hay bales and talk. One man, a Vietnam vet, who had rarely spoken a word to anyone, told me over a thermos of black coffee, "I haven't felt part of anything in decades. That toll booth." That was the first time I saw someone stand up and win. The new HOA formed after the audit and community vote asked me to serve as chair. I declined. I'd done my duty. But I suggested something better, a rotating council, made up of volunteers from each block, serving 6-month terms with open community review. And more importantly, no president, no executive powers, just a group of people figuring things out together. They agreed. At the first meeting, under the new format, I spoke briefly, just a few words. I built a fence once, not to keep people out, but to show them how far things had gone. This time, let's build bridges instead. One afternoon in early fall, I received a small package in the mail. Inside was a wooden model, a tiny replica of my toll booth. Hand-carved, intricate. There was no note, just a name burned into the base, Lucas, age 9. That little carving now sits on my mantle, next to my badge, next to the old deed that proved I owned the road all along, next to the letter Sharon sent me in defeat. Each a piece of history, each a symbol of the past, not as a wound, but as a lesson. Because sometimes, justice doesn't roar like thunder. Sometimes, it creaks like an old gate swinging open. And sometimes, it costs just $20 to remind people that respect, like land, is earned. I should have known it wasn't over. Drama like this never fades quietly, especially not when Sharon is involved. It was a cool November morning when I first heard her voice again. I was at the booth, chatting with a group of teens who were filming a short documentary on neighborhood justice. Then came that shrill, unmistakable tone, echoing across the driveway like a rusty hinge. "This is still an active investigation, Sharon." She stepped out of a shiny black SUV that looked like it had never touched gravel before. She wore a navy blue blazer, oversized sunglasses, and that ever-present clipboard clutched to her chest like a life raft. I blinked in disbelief. Her hair was shorter now, more severe. Her heels sank slightly into the dirt, but her posture was the same, rigid, defiant, like she still believed she held the moral high ground. "Sharon," I asked, stepping forward. She whipped off her glasses dramatically. "You're not allowed to operate a toll without county permission," she snapped. "This is extortion." I looked around. The teens had stopped filming, eyes wide. "You're trespassing," I said calmly. "This road is still private. You'd know that if you read the audit report, or the county's boundary map, or the court filings." She waved the clipboard at me. "I have new evidence. I've filed an appeal to have the annexation re-examined. That land was always intended for communal use." I couldn't help but smile. "Sharon, that fantasy expired months ago." Then she made her mistake. She tried to push past me, marched straight toward the booth, and yanked the donation box from its post. "What are you doing?" I asked, voice rising. "This is unlicensed income. I'm placing it under civil hold until a judge reviews." She didn't finish the sentence, because just then, Deputy Sanchez pulled up. Not in a hurry, just casual, observant. He'd seen her vehicle from the road and decided to check in. "Sharon Langley," he said, stepping out of the cruiser, "didn't expect to see you back in town." Her lips tightened. "I'm here lawfully." Sanchez pointed to the sign clearly marked Private Road. "Actually, you're on posted restricted property. and you just removed a locked container. That's petty theft. I'm on public land, she shouted. No, I replied quietly. You're standing on the strip of dirt I've owned since 1972. She froze, then turned slowly back toward the booth. I want a lawyer. Sanchez pulled out his radio. We'll get you one. Sharon wasn't arrested that day, but a report was filed, and this time, there were no HOA positions, no title shields to protect her. She was just another citizen caught trespassing and interfering with private property. But word of her comeback spread fast and not in the way she hoped. That night, someone edited a video of her outburst into a remix set to country music. It went viral faster than her first meltdown. Neighbors who once whispered in fear now laughed openly. One family hosted a Sharon-free cookout with banners and matching shirts. The HOA board voted unanimously to install a security camera, not for residents, but in case Sharon ever showed up again. But something shifted in me. 2. For weeks, I'd thought we'd won. That the fences were gone, the dues refunded, the damage undone. But Sharon's return reminded me justice isn't just a moment. It's a process. And power real. Community-driven power needs constant tending, like a garden. So I gathered a few neighbors. We created the Common Ground Committee. No titles, no bylaws, just coffee and questions, and a promise to talk before anything gets built, planted, painted, or paved. And we opened every meeting with the same story. Once, there was a fence, then there was a toll booth, but what saved us was a porch. 2 weeks later, I found another note in the toll booth. For the chalk, for the flowers, for teaching my kid what fairness looks like. Anonymous. There was $100 tucked underneath. I didn't touch it for a while. Just stood there, staring at the ink, the fingerprints, the quiet proof that people were watching. That they remembered. That fences fall, but legacies linger. And somewhere, across the miles and years, Sharon, in whatever condo, courtroom, or community she now lurks, knows that too. Because her fence may have started the war, but my booth finished it. Winter crept in with a quiet frost that settled on the ranch fields like a blanket of calm. The trees stood bare, the skies a soft gray. And for the first time in what felt like years, the air around the community didn't bristle with tension it breathed. But underneath that peace was a reckoning still unfolding. The audit reports came in, 2 thick binders delivered by certified mail to every household under the HOA's jurisdiction. And I mean every household. Not just the select few who used to be in the loop. For once, transparency wasn't a buzzword on a clipboard. It was real, cold, honest, and it hit like a storm. $130,000 in misallocated fines, unauthorized surveillance equipment billed as security landscaping, a private consulting contract signed solely by Sharon to her cousin's company for annexation research, costing the HOA $47,000. No deliverables, no receipts, no records. The annexation clauses themselves fabricated. Dates didn't match official county records. Signatures were forged, and 2 parcels, including mine, were never legally eligible for annexation in the first place. The report used legal terms like malfeasance, fraudulent misrepresentation, and civil liability. To neighbors like me, it just meant one thing. We'd been played. The week after the audit went public, I hosted a porch meeting. No agenda. Just coffee, folding chairs, and an open invitation. To my surprise, more than 40 people showed up. Some brought cookies, others brought stories. And one by one, they spoke. An elderly couple who had been fined repeatedly for a small garden fence that barely stood waist high. A widow who had nearly lost her home over unpaid fees. She'd never received notices for because the HOA had sent them to an outdated address and never corrected it. A young family who'd painted their front door teal and received 6 warnings, each more threatening than the last. And then came Daniel. He was one of the quiet ones, a single dad. Worked nights, kept to himself. But that night, he brought out a manila envelope. Inside emails from Sharon, dated during her time as president. Messages that pressured board members to approve actions without meetings. Suggested language for fines before violations occurred. Even attempts to smear residents who questioned her. It wasn't just a bad system. It was targeted control. The next HOA general meeting was held in the high school auditorium, a neutral ground. The board members who had remained after Sharon's departure sat in silence, while a county mediator presided. I wasn't on the board, but they gave me a seat up front. A few of the old guard resigned on the spot, but some, like Henry, the former treasurer, stood and faced the crowd. I should have seen it, he said, voice shaking. I let her blind me with fear, with rules. I thought I was keeping the neighborhood safe. I'm sorry. And you know what? People forgave him, not because it was easy, but because accountability had finally arrived. The HOA as we knew it was dissolved. In its place rose a new structure, flatter, more democratic, reviewed and co-signed by the county. Decisions would now require community review. Fines had to be approved through a third-party mediator. Financials would be published quarterly online. And perhaps most importantly, no single person would ever again have unilateral authority over shared land. The system didn't become perfect overnight, but it became ours. One afternoon in January, I visited the old ranch gate, the one Sharon's crew had damaged when they first tried fencing me out. It had been rebuilt now, stronger than before. A small metal plaque had been screwed into the post, one I hadn't noticed until that moment, in honor of standing ground for Grandpa, from the neighborhood that finally listened. I touched the cool surface. The wind moved gently through the trees, and I knew not just in theory, but in truth, that fences don't make communities. People do. Spring arrived like a quiet promise. The frost melted. Wildflowers peeked through the fields. The air carried birdsong instead of complaint. For the first time in years, my mornings began with peace, a mug of coffee, the gentle hum of tractors in the distance, and no strangers patrolling with clipboards and veiled threats. And at the mouth of my driveway, still standing proud, was the toll booth. It wasn't fancy, just hand-cut cedar, a tin roof, and a sign that still read, Private Road, $20 per vehicle. HOA fees don't apply here. But it had become something more than a barrier. It was a symbol. People still came, some to pay, some just to see it. College students wrote papers about grassroots resistance. Tourists from nearby towns stopped to snap photos. A few even left notes tucked under rocks, inside the donation box, or scrawled on the side of the booth itself in erasable chalk. Wish our grandpa had your guts. Freedom starts at fences. Still can't believe you charged orange. Some left coffee, others left pies. One family brought me a little wooden carving of the booth, accurate down to the rooster weather vane. I didn't do it for fame, but I welcomed the fellowship. A local journalist wrote an article titled "The Man Who Beat the HOA One Toll at a Time." It went viral. Within a week, I had requests from morning shows, talk podcasts, even a documentary crew. I turned most of them down except one, Shamal Bey, a small-town filmmaker who said, I just want to tell the truth, no drama, no spin. That I could respect. He filmed over 3 days, me fixing fences, talking with neighbors, drinking beer with Tom and Linda, who used to be the first ones to side with Sharon and were now my most loyal porch poker players. And the last scene, me walking out to the booth, dusting off the sign, and sitting in my old rocking chair under the tree. I built it out of spite, I said into the mic, chuckling, but I kept it out of love. Sharon never returned again, not officially. But we heard whispers. Someone spotted her trying to start a new HOA initiative in another county, this time pushing to turn a community garden into a gated parking lot. She was promptly voted down. Turns out, her name carries weight now, just not the kind she hoped. And as for our HOA, it still exists, barely. Not in power, but in service. A rotating committee, transparent, humble, and closely watched, not by fear, but by neighbors who care. We hold community potlucks every other month. Disagreements still happen. That's life. But they end in dialogue, not citations. Last week, a kid about 10 years old came by with his dad. He handed me $20, even though the gate was wide open. I know it's free now, he said. But my dad said you fought hard for this road. I looked at the bill, then at his earnest face, and gave it back. You keep it, I said. Buy some seeds. Grow something. He smiled, nodded, and walked off. His dad giving me a quiet thumbs up. And in that moment, in the quiet of a ranch drive once blocked by fences and now lined with sunflowers, I knew the war was never about tolls or bylaws. It was about dignity, about the right to walk your own land without fear, about defending what's yours not out of anger, but out of love for the soil beneath your boots and the legacy behind your name. So now, When people ask, why'd you build a toll booth? I just grin and say, because Sharon built a fence. And the rest is history.